Welcome back to C.O.G Music. I'm Steve, and this was going to be the video on changing the appearance of the top of my Ibanez AA D50CE. As I explained in my previous video, my review of the guitar itself, it's an open box guitar that I bought. Very few flaws to it, but the few that I could find were purely cosmetic. A couple of them on the top of the guitar, some small gouges / indentations. One was on the side of the guitar as well, and I don't necessarily want to make this a how-to video. There's tons of great videos that I did a lot of research on and watching and familiarizing myself before going about doing it myself. Obviously, it involved sanding and refinishing. The hardest part of the process was deciding to go ahead and do it. I did a lot of contemplating about just, leaving it alone, the fear that I was going to make it worse. But in the end, I was really, from my own opinion, very happy with the way that it turned out. Checking out all those videos that I have mentioned, I did watch. Some of them were specifically about doing a distressed type of finish on a guitar. Some of them not as dramatic as what I went with. But some as well. Ultimately, based on what I spent on the guitar and as little as I spent, I thought it would be a good opportunity to just go ahead and give it a try on my own. Obviously, it started out with masking the guitar, sides, fretboard, neck, up to probably about the 10th fret, around the sides and the back of it, getting all that masked off, and then going about sanding, and obviously using coarse sandpaper and slowly working my way down to a fine grit sandpaper. Stopping often to check, clean it off, dry it off, and see exactly where it was in that sanding process. And should I just stop, move on to the next higher grit sandpaper, and making those decisions along the way, which ends up completely just being a personal preference. I did go from a grit. This is what I started out with. I don't know if the coarseness of this is coming through. All the sandpaper I used was what I already had on hand in my toolbox. But this was the coarsest that I have. And actually, this particular patch of it doesn't contain the number of the grit that it is, but it just says coarse, and it certainly is. I moved on from that to this 150 grit. Then down to then 320, and I had two grits of what I call emery paper. Not, doesn't really have a sandpaper-like quality. 600, that's what this is, and I also have an 800 grit. Once I got down to the 600 and the 800, I started using water with these. But really focusing on some of the areas on the guitar that had those gouges I was referring to, and trying to sand the surrounding area around the gouges down fairly even with the gouges. They weren't very deep, so it didn't take too much. But those are the areas that have the completely through bare spruce finishes. Removing the strings was the first step prior to even masking, but also including in the masking area was the bridge. Getting as much paper, newspaper, crumpled up, wedged into the sound hole to block off any dust and other particles from getting inside the guitar. After working my way through all the various grits of sandpaper and getting to not only an appearance that I liked, but a smoothness of finish that I liked, there's, you know, as far as touching these bare spruce areas and where it blends into the finished wood area, there's, you know, there's no noticeable difference in height between the two, at least with my fingertip. Then it was a matter of staining. I had a very light gray varathane version of stain. It was, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it had weathered in the name. You know, a weathered light gray. I actually mixed some weathered white stain that I had in with it to try to even make it lighter. One of the reasons I also, besides the slight cosmetic imperfections on the top, wanted to go ahead and do this was, if you look at Ibanez's website, and this particular color version of the guitar, it shows a very distinguishable difference between the outer edge of the top of the guitar, which was black, and a fade into a very lighter, obviously gray finish towards the center of the body. Much like my Breedlove guitar. But this, when I received it, it almost wasn't noticeable at all, the difference between the outer edges of the body, which were black, and the center of the body. Maybe, you know, a slightly lighter shade of black. It really wasn't any gray to it. Unfortunately, I didn't take any before pictures, but I really liked the look on Ibanez's website and wanted to achieve something more similar to that. So after treating the top of the guitar, and I did the whole thing with that mixture of the weathered gray and the weathered white, it wasn't coming out as dark and deeply as I thought it was going to. But I just, at one point, just accepted it for what it was. That's something you got to be prepared to do if you're going to do something like this. When you go into it with high expectations, there's a good chance you're not going to meet those expectations. And kind of embracing the imperfection is something you need to do at some point. But anyway, the thing that really wasn't soaking up any of the gray, weathered, white, weathered stain combo was the bare spruce areas. So I had some, and again, that was a varathane product of stain, which doesn't say on the can. I'm fairly sure it's a water-based stain. I did have some purely black oil-based stain, which I then went over the bare spruce areas with, and it did soak up a good deal of the black stain and darkened up these areas, which I really liked. You know, some of these areas that kind of did bring out the gray stain. The combination of the two, I was happy with. Let that obviously dry very thoroughly, and I topped it off with a spray-on polyurethane. I can't remember exactly, it was either 4 or 5 separate light coats of that. I did go slightly heavier with the application with the polyurethane on the last coat, and thoroughly letting it dry, do some very fine grit sanding to it in between each application of the polyurethane. But this is what I ended up with. And the other thing was obviously using a hair dryer and heating up the old pick guard to remove it, and getting a corner of it lifted up and very slowly focusing the hot air right next to that area, and slowly it would peel up more and more and more till I had the whole thing removed. This particular one I really liked. There was a package I came across on Amazon of 10. There were different styles, different colors, you know, your more brown tortoiseshell type looking pick guard, black, more standard ovalish rounded radius pick guard, and this one, which really obviously reminded me of like a Gibson-esque hummingbird type pick guard, which is the one I went with. But it was $10 for the pack of 10 pick guards, and I really liked the look of it as well. Now, one other thing I wanted to include in this video, because of the size of the guitar and the depth of the guitar, and it being, again, what Ibanez refers to as a grand dreadnought, I looked and looked and looked and looked for cases or gig bags that this guitar would fit in, other than the recommended case, which is sold by Ibanez, that the guitar obviously will fit in. The price of the case I could find anywhere online ranged from $250 to $275, which I was not going to spend, having purchased the guitar for $161, and even at its retail price at $299.99, I certainly wouldn't want to be having to spend $250 to $275 on a case for it. What I ended up going with, I remembered at one point I had owned a Ibanez acoustic bass. So I started looking at acoustic bass gig bags and found one dimension-wise that worked very well with this, was very reasonably priced, around $65. It's a Gator gig bag. This is the Gator gig bag that I ended up going with. Again, it's for an acoustic bass. Was on Amazon and fits nicely into that. So given the choices of $250 to $275 for a hardshell Ibanez case for the guitar, or $65 fairly decently padded gig bag, I went with the $65 gig bag. So that's about it. If you do have any more specific questions of what I did, how I did it, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will get back with an answer to that. Thank you for checking out this video. Definitely appreciate all the support I've gotten up to this point. What I do want to get back to in future videos, including right away, is going back to what I originally stated the channel was going to be about, and that's an older person such as myself getting back into playing the guitar. I have had a couple of go-arounds in the past. This was kind of still the amount of time between the last time and this time was enough where it was almost like relearning the guitar, but getting into how my practice sessions are going and what has been added to those things. I want to get back into doing some videos on that. So thank you for checking out this one. Remember, whenever you pick up your guitar, whether you're just beginning or you're a veteran playing the guitar, have fun. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.